Alright everybody, welcome back. In the last episode we cut all the joinery and glued up the transom. In this video we're going to be continuing work on the transom, adding a plywood back to it, and then also working on the Keelson. So let's get started. First I'll just take a slick to remove any thick epoxy areas. This is going to save me work with the plane and sander later on. Then after I knock down those thick parts, I'll smooth all my joints with a hand plane. And because there's two pieces of wood that are meeting at 90-degree angles, I'll hold my plane at a 45-degree angle to the joint. That's going to prevent some cross-grain tear out. Alright, so I have the transom all finished and sanded and looking good. Before I mount it to the strong back, I'm going to take a chamfer bit on my router and I'm going to router this bottom board here, because when the transom's mounted in the boat, it's at an angle like this, and if you don't remove some material there, you won't let the water escape. Essentially it'll pool right there and can cause you some problems. So I'm going to do that before we get it mounted to the strong back. Alright, so before I mount the transom to the strong back, I decided that I want to add my sheet of plywood to the back of it. I went over and I grabbed some Okumi marine grade plywood from Johnson's, my local hardwood dealer. I have to get a lot more of this stuff later on, but it's really high quality stuff. It has no voids within the plies. It has glues, and the wood species are really good when it comes to moisture and water. So what I'm going to do is cut out the shape, glue it, and screw it to the transom frame. I'm going to be using special fasteners that are made of silicon bronze that don't corrode. And then I need to cut an angle at the back of this that's going to match that angle of the rocker there. I also wanted to show you I got some goodies in the mail. I'm going to be using a bunch of Total Bolt products. They are helping me with this project, one of the sponsors. They've been awesome to talk to and work with so far. So I just got this, got a lot of mixing buckets for epoxy. I got penetrating epoxy, regular resin that's going to be for the fiberglass, and all sorts of these really nice silicon bronze fasteners, and some nails that I'll be using to attach the plywood to the frame. So thanks, Total Boat. Next, I'll trace out the transom shape onto my plywood and then cut out the shape, leaving about 1/8 of an inch proud all the way around. And after I glue and nail it down, I'll then take a flush cut router bit to get my perfect fit. All right, before I get any farther with the transom, I've actually decided that I'm going to try to steam bend the Keelson here, which is made out of white oak. The bottom rocker of this type of boat is pretty steep here at the front end, and it's really asking a lot to try to bend that. So I'm going to go over to my steam bender tube that I have, and we'll put the front end in here, which is really the only area that is struggling to make that curve, and let that sit for a couple hours, pull it out, and then we'll clamp it to the frame and strong back here and let that kind of sit and basically develop the curve that we need. So we'll do that. While the Keelson sits in the steamer for a couple hours, I can go back to work on the transom. I'm going to attach the 1/2 inch sheet of plywood to the transom frame using both ring-shanked silicone bronze nails and epoxy. I'm going to drill a bunch of small pilot holes for the nails first, then I'll add my epoxy to the transom frame, but before I attach the plywood, I'll start a nail in each corner so that it just barely protrudes and fits in its pilot hole. This will allow me to perfectly line up all the rest of my pilot holes. And here's where I start that nail in each corner. Alright, now while the epoxy on the transom dries, I can work on bending my Keelson. I pull the Keelson out of the steam chamber and get it clamped into position as soon as possible, then I'll leave it there to dry for a couple days. Well, I just wanted to share something funny with you. I understand now why I don't ever really see anybody mixing epoxy in Dixie cups. I thought I'd save some money and not use the nice mixing cups like that. But apparently either the chemicals or the heat completely melted this thing. It's just now it's essentially attached to my bench over here. So don't use Dixie cups, okay? Once the epoxy cures, I clamp the transom to my workbench. Then using a flush cut bit and a router, I'll flush up that plywood to the oak frame. Alright everyone, that's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed, and we'll see you on part 4 of the next video where we move on further to the frame and mounting the transom to the strong back. See you next time.